Your lease is still valid after you were evicted? Okay. I am the landlord of some apartments in the city. I sign the lease agreements and go over the basics with tenants, although they don't usually want me to spend hours delving into the fine print. 99% of the time, it's a breeze, and everything is fine. One lady, let's call her Karen, had been paying her rent via a new bank account and new checks for the last several months. All of the sudden, we got several chargeback fees on our account. She had put a stop payment on the checks and closed the account. I immediately called her. Me, hey Karen, it looks like your checks bounced for the last few months. I just wanted to make sure everything is okay. Karen, oh no, I promise I'll get this fixed. Me, okay, you've been a good tenant in the past, so I'll give you a month. Needless to say, a month passed and she didn't pay. So I called her again. Me, hey Karen, we still haven't received payment, so I'm afraid we'll have to file for eviction. Karen, oh God no, I'm an old woman. I can't afford to be evicted. I'm trying so hard to pay. Can you give me another shot? Me, as long as you pay before the court date, the eviction doesn't have to go through. The court date arrives, and guess who hasn't paid yet? At court, the judge rules for a 24-hour notice to vacate. Karen, in tears, comes up to me afterwards. Karen, can you please give me another chance? I can't afford to go anywhere else. Me, I'm sorry, Karen, but the only way I could do that is if you paid off the debt, signed a new lease agreement, plus a first month's rent, plus a new security deposit, and I don't think that's going to happen. Goodbye. So I left, and I thought that was that. My maintenance guy would come in a few days to do the inspection and clean up, and then we'd put it on the market. He shows up a few days later, and there's a problem. They're still there. So I call the sheriff to schedule a set out. A problem though. According to the sheriff, the 24-hour notice was no longer valid, as we had struck up a deal afterwards, so the court had reversed the eviction decision. I had no recollection of having decided that this would happen. I called the court, and they informed me that the eviction was no longer valid, as apparently, I told the sheriff that I was giving her more time, invalidating the decision, etc. What happened was that Karen had called the sheriff and told him that the court had reversed the decision because of a non-existent deal. She had then called the court and told them that the sheriff could not evict her as I had waived the notice, and she had used my words, twisting my denial of an extension into a deal. I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. I sent Karen a copy of a new lease agreement asking for the debts, in addition to rent for a first month and a new security deposit. Her lawyer then contacted me. Yes, she had the money to hire a lawyer somehow, informing me that in fact her old lease agreement was still valid, as my deal, the one that would require a new lease agreement, invalidated the eviction decision. So I filed for eviction on the grounds that she had not paid for several months now, 5 to be exact, and therefore had invalidated her old lease agreement. And then I read her old lease agreement. I already know these contracts pretty well, but like I said, I don't usually delve into the minutiae. This time, I did. We show up at court. Karen has her lawyer. Karen is bursting, grinning like a fool, like she's won the lottery. Her lawyer looks fairly happy as well. The judge asks me to speak. Me. I would like Karen to leave the apartments, but she is refusing, despite the fact that, according to the court's last decision, she should have left over a month ago now. Judge. And Miss Karen? Lawyer. Miss Karen cannot be ejected from her home without a new notice. Yes, she has not yet paid past due rent. However, she and the landlord struck up a deal, giving her the time she needed to pay via verbal agreement. This deal, made directly after the last court date, invalidated the last decision, so Miss Karen will require a new decision, and therefore a new notice, before she can rightfully be evicted from her home. Until then, her lease agreement is still valid. Insert legal crap. Judge. And landlord. What do you have to say? Me. Well, Your Honor, I have to agree. They have made a very, very compelling argument. Karen and I did indeed make a deal, giving her the time she needed to pay. And yes, her old lease agreement is still valid, I guess. Well, according to the terms of the still valid lease, there are some additional things that the court needs to be aware of that I'd like to go over for clarification. I'm sure you have a copy, Your Honor? Judge. Yes, I do. Me. And you have a copy, lawyer? Lawyer. Yes, I do. Me. Excellent. Well, Your Honor, if you look at Section 4, subsection A, on page 2, you will see that after 10 days of non-payment, a late fee of $100 is applied. If you continue reading to subsection B, you will see that after 15 days of non-payment, additional late fees of $10 per day are applied until full payment is rendered. If you continue to subsection C, you will see that failed payments necessitate a chargeback fee of $50 per failed payment. If you will continue, Your Honor, to page 4, section 7, subsection F, you'll see that if a tenant is in any way responsible for a loss of rent, including leaving an apartment in less than move-in ready condition, failed payments, or, lastly, refusal to vacate in the case of an eviction, the tenant is responsible for payment of said loss of rent, in addition to any other debts owed. In addition, on page 8, section 14, subsection A, you'll note that the tenant is responsible for any and all legal fees resultant from the eviction process, including attorney's fees, such as for the attorney I hired to help me review this lease agreement. Finally, on page 10, the last page, section 17, subsection B, you will see that the tenant is responsible for all HVAC services rendered on their unit. As we sent in a company to fix the unit in Karen's apartment at her request, we have the invoice here for the replacement unit, in addition to the totals for all of the fees listed. At this point, the lawyer has gone completely pale. It's clear that he was more concerned that I would fight the whole deal thing than the terms of the lease he thought he'd have to fight to keep valid. Karen looks utterly shell-shocked, her mouth slightly agape, like a child confused by a game of peekaboo. The judge, meanwhile, is completely unfazed, until I hand her the invoice, alongside my maths, a spreadsheet, and a piece of paper with the total debt owed circled and highlighted at the bottom of the page. Her eyes widened to the size of her mouth as her jaw dropped with an audible gasp. As you can see, Your Honor, the total owed is in excess of $16,000. I will happily accept the payment in the form of a cashier's check. I'd hate to have to charge yet another $50 fee for failed payment, should another personal check bounce. Judge, lawyer, do you have anything to say? At this point, the lawyer looks like he's about to pass out. Karen seems to have stopped breathing. The judge remains silent for a moment, and then collects herself. Judge, I'm afraid you'll have to address that matter of debt in a different court than this one, landlord. We are here only to judge whether Miss Karen is to be evicted from her home today. Me? Oh, if she wants to stay, I'd be happy to let her. As long as she agrees to continue to abide by the terms of the lease agreement, specifically those clauses outlined above, and pays the debt owed today. Judge, I'm going to rule for a 24-hour notice to vacate, unless Miss Karen can produce payment at this moment. Karen sits still, quiet, speechless even. Her lawyer is eyeing the window, I like to think contemplating his decisions in life that led him to this point. Maybe thinking about jumping. I don't know. Judge, right, a 24-hour notice to vacate. And landlord? Me. Yes? Judge, you'll want to file those charges in small claims court, or a higher court if it exceeds the amount that you can legally pursue in small claims. Me, already filed, Your Honor. The case has now been resolved. And needless to say, I got a fairly significant bonus in addition to a slight raise.